Now, a bombing at a mosque in the Afghan capital, Kabul, has killed at least 21 people, including a prominent cleric. Dozens more were wounded. No one's claimed responsibility. The so-called Islamic State carried out a series of attacks in Afghanistan since the Taliban returned to power a year ago.
The mosque was crowded and the bomb was powerful. Dozens died and several children are believed to be among the wounded. Casualty numbers are expected to rise. Security forces have now sealed off the blast scene. But this neighborhood is still in shock.
I lost my cousin. He went to the mosque and then the blast happened. We only found out at midnight that he had lost his life.
Afghanistan has been hit by regular attacks since the Taliban seized power in August last year. Many of them have been claimed by the Islamic State. Last week, the group claimed responsibility for killing a prominent Taliban cleric at his religious center in Kabul. But so far, no one has taken credit for this attack. At the hospital, the families of the victims are waiting for news.
So many people were killed. Some were even thrown out of the windows of the mosque. I have brought 2 of my family members here. They were injured in the blast.
The Islamic State has primarily targeted minority communities such as Shiites, Sufis, and Sikhs. But their focus now seems to be widening just as the Taliban celebrate their 1 year in power.
Well, straight to the Afghan capital then, Kabul. We can join journalist Ali Latifi. Welcome, Ali. No claim of responsibility, but who is thought to be behind this latest attack?
If you look at it, over the last year, there has been a string of attacks on places of worship, whether that be masjids belonging to people from the Shia sect or the Sunni sect or the Sufi sect, or even Gurdwara belonging to the Sikh population in Kabul. And these have happened all over the country. And in almost all of the cases, the claim of responsibility did belong to the so-called Islamic State. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for this specific attack, but it does seem to fall in line with their pattern. But the fact that no one has claimed responsibility for it does raise some questions.
Right. And as we mentioned in the report, this week also saw the first anniversary of the Taliban takeover of the country. Are people reading anything into this timing?
Not necessarily, because even leading up to the timing, there was a killing of another religious leader. I think what it does prove is that the Islamic Emirate is having as much of a problem as the former Islamic Republic in taking out an insurgency. The former Islamic Republic had to deal with the Taliban when they were the insurgency, as well as the so-called Islamic State. And now the Emirate, the Taliban, is only left with the so-called Islamic State, but they too have been unable to take on this group, because even if this specific instance isn't them, the truth is that they still pose a threat, and that they are the biggest threat remaining in the country at this point.
Right, and why is it that these battle-hardened fighters seem so unable to provide the country with the one thing that you would have expected from them, which is just security?
Well, I think it's just more proof that it's very difficult to govern, right? It's very difficult to govern. It's very difficult to provide security. Because, yes, you came from the battlegrounds, but what experience do you have in you can destroy things, but what experience do you have in protecting them, right? What experience do you have in running things and making sure that they operate correctly? And then the other thing is that this, again, if it does turn out to be them, but also just in general, the so-called Islamic State, it's moved from having specific bases in specific districts of the country into having sort of these cells that operate and live in certain areas for a while until they can plan and carry out an attack, and then they move on. Another sect of the group will move on to another area and do the same thing over the course of weeks or months. So it's much more difficult to find them because it's not as clear where they are specifically. They could really be anywhere at this point. They're like covert cells.
I thank you for that, Ali Latifi in Kabul.